Eli Lake, thank you for joining me for this emergency episode of the Ben Domenech Podcast because the former president of the United States has been indicted. How do you feel about that?
I could be persuaded, I suppose. I think generally indicting a former president's a bad idea. I think it's good in our country that our leaders leave the White House and they are not dogged by prosecutions and lawfare, and that it's bad usually in other countries. And this was, by the way, one of the reasons why you could say that the Roman Republic declined. This is a problem that goes back to the beginning of, democratic or republics. So that is a general, but then it's like, all right, if there's a case and you can show me that it was worse than what I thought it was, then I might be able to be persuaded that it was, yes, a precedent was broken, but it was in response to a terrible precedent. So I know this is a long answer, but like, I don't know, if there was proof that Donald Trump had clearly given the instruction to, I don't know, Patriot Prayer or Proud Boys to bring weapons to the Capitol, that's sedition. I don't have a problem with that. I mean, I feel like that a better, like, I
go kidnap Mike Pence. If it's
something like that. Like, I supported the second impeachment just based on everything else that he was doing in the lead up to that. So I thought he should have been impeached that second time. So I don't want to make it seem like I can't imagine him not doing anything. But then, like, you look at what this is like, Alvin Bragg. And this is Alvin Bragg is an elected official in New York City. So he has these political interests. So, to a certain extent, he's following his incentives. What I think is worse is that it's the legal elites like Harvard Law School emeritus Professor Lawrence Tribe or Andrew Weissman, the number 2 for the Mueller investigation, or Barbara McQuaid, or all of these people who have now said, "Oh my God, what a solid case this is." I'm sorry, but you just broke a precedent. You just crossed a Rubicon, and you've accused the former president because he's like picking his feet in Poughkeepsie. It's like we got him on criminal jaywalking, and no jaywalker is above the law, and including Donald Trump. And I'm like, you guys have lost your minds. Yeah. Even if you wanted to nail Trump, even if you think he's the devil, you think this is going to fly. And that's why I'm somewhat heartened that people who I have come to sort of disagree with in the Trump era sometimes on things like Russiagate, like David Frum and even Jonathan Chait, they're like, this is weak sauce, bro. Like, what are we doing? And
the line for me was when Andrew McCabe, is on CNN going, yeah, this is really unimpressive. When Ian Millhiser, a guy who...
Yeah, I know, right. When Ian Millhiser...
tweeting, I have not yet been arrested by the Trump administration, for the first year or whatever.
I have to be honest with you. When I saw Ian Millhiser come out against it, I was like, well, maybe I'm wrong. Because he's almost always... No, I'm kidding. But yeah, you're right. I mean, so that's, hopeful. But, there still is a Praetorian Guard of these real legal elites. People who, like Mary McCord, people who had senior positions at the Justice Department, people who still have enormous influence within the Justice Department.
James Comey, this is a good day, and it's like, that's, look, I'm disgusted by, sort of everything about Comey because I don't like people who play up their own Boy Scout nature.
That was maybe one of the best things that Donald Trump ever did was fire James Comey.
The only mistake he made was not firing him on the first day. He deserved to be fired on the first day.
Yeah, right.
I would have done it just out of, vengeance for Martha Stewart. But, it's one of these things where I think you come into something like this and you say, okay, on the one hand, this is this momentous legal event going after a former president of the United States, a former commander-in-chief. You really want it to stick. But aren't the political incentives kind of adjusted in such a way that it doesn't matter for Alvin Bragg whether they stick or not?
That's what I think is going on. I think that, he would suffer more of a backlash if he didn't bring a case, no matter how weak it was, because they basically, I just did my podcast. It's out today, and I call it the Democrats' Stan Valchek problem. And I'm basing this on The Wire season 2, where police major, powerful guy, gets a unit to investigate his rival going back to high school, this guy, Frank Sabatka, who runs the local stevedores union. And then there's this great scene where he finally is getting the update from the prosecutor and the police guys and everything like that. And they're explaining this, incredible, criminal conspiracy that involve, importing drugs and like bringing women for an illegal prostitution. And like, it's like, it's interesting stuff. And so, and Stan Valchek says, I'm not hearing the name this is an investigation about Frank Sabatka.
Yeah.
I'm not hearing his name. Where is Frank Sabatka? And that's the point. It's like, that's an abuse of the law. We do not just investigate the man. We investigate the crime. And it's not the first time. Bobby Kennedy did this when it came to Jimmy Hoffa. There's all kinds of examples of this kind of abusive thing. But for some reason, in the era of Trump, this vice, which generally was looked down upon as an abusive prosecutorial, became a virtue. So Andrew Weissman could not be more open about the fact that, like, oh my God. So he did this, by the way, in Mueller. Nobody ever was threatened with jail time for violating the Foreign Agents Registration Act. He came up with a brand new interpretation of it that overturned like 50 years of precedent, and he bragged about it in his book. He's like, yeah, I was rolling up the conspiracy, which by the way, they never did get the conspiracy.
Yeah.
And Andrew Weissman is I think he's really metaphorically such a cancer on our republic. That this is somebody who was part of the team that did not find a conspiracy between Trump and Russia, and still corrects people on Twitter saying, no. We did find collusion. We just didn't try. I'm sorry. I know we can't. But it's so frustrating because it's like somebody like that has a lot of influence. And it's just really, we got to clean. It's like, this is where I think Barr kind of, William Barr had it. He had it right. The Justice Department really does need to be cleaned out, and it's like bigger than the Justice Department. The legal elites. Like, I know this is going to sound somewhat crazy, but I kind of feel like we should shut down Harvard Law School until we figure out what the hell is going on there. You know what I mean? It's like I'm just like,
you're right. You're right. I mean,
I know, and I'm just like, I know you guys are smart. I couldn't have gotten into Harvard Law School. I'm not, but like we have entrusted these institutions with, doing justice, and something has happened in the last generation, or maybe before, and it's produced people like Andrew Weissman, who are just so abusive of the other big thing that he did is he destroyed Arthur Andersen Consulting, and then he was rebuked unanimously by the Supreme Court.
Yep.
We would hope that would be an outlier. That this is a guy.
Can I ask you? Is this the chickens coming home to roost when it comes to the credentialing of our elites? That we've given them all these stamps that say this is an elite thinker, this is an elite person, but in reality, they turn out to basically be, machine party members essentially.
I don't know. That's an interesting. I've thought about that. I don't know. Listen, once you start going down that road, it can be pretty bad too. You get the Cultural Revolution.
Yeah.
We don't want that. I'm just, what I'm saying is that it's a specific problem, as I said, with our legal elites. There's a very revealing tweet from Jennifer Rubin of the Washington Post, which is like, she's describing like the status of the debate over like whether this is a good prosecution or solid law or not. And she says, on one side are people who have experience with SDNY, that's the Southern District of New York, and New York State prosecutions, and law and the Brookings Institution and Just Security, which is I guess a website affiliated with the Brennan Center at New York University. And she's right that if you go to Brookings and you go to if you go to like the Lawfare blog, you will find lots of people defending this Alvin Bragg. I haven't checked that, but I know Just Security has been like laying the thing. And these are like law professors. These are people who went to the best law schools. And is the job in these cases to give the best legal analysis, or is the job to put lipstick on a pig and to basically rationalize what is a totally abusive prosecution of Trump, which I think should be summarily dismissed? And, listen, my hope is that Alvin Bragg will suffer grave reputational damage for pulling this stunt. I doubt that will happen, but that will at least be a kind of disincentive for, let's be honest, there's going to be ambitious Republican DAs who are now going to look at bringing in, Hunter Biden or Jim Biden for picking his feet in Poughkeepsie. That's what it is. They're just going to figure out some other, pretext to, and the process will be the penalty. And it's the indictment, it's the fingerprinting and all that stuff. And, how are we going to get out of this?
This is the thing that concerns me the most, because, we have resisted largely in America the impulse to engage in these types of aggressive prosecutor pursuit of people who are their partisan enemies. And I think that we're now going to move into a new stage in all likelihood. But that retribution, that tit for tat kind of approach, is the kind of thing that just completely wrecks our ability to function as a republic. I don't know, though, what the incentive is going to be in the opposite direction, to say, I'm not going to do this thing. Because instead, I think there are going to be a lot of people who, have donors and voters and other people in their ears basically saying, why aren't you standing up to this kind of persecution from the left? You should be indicting so-and-so. He deserves to be in jail. And they're saying that obviously for partisan reasons, ideological reasons. But the point is to sort of say, look, if you follow around somebody day after day, you're eventually going to find when they, are speeding or parking illegally or, doing whatever it is. And you're going to find something to book them on. And that to me is just a really, it makes bipartisanship impossible in terms of the way that our government is designed to function.
Well, listen, sometimes bipartisanship can be overrated.
Oh, totally.
Makes potentially the peaceful transfer of power very more difficult. Now, listen, Trump is a norm violator. What Trump did after the 2020 election is inexcusable. I'm never going to defend that. And as I said, if this had been a really solid case that dealt with serious behavior that I think, voters could say, yeah, that's a crime, you can't do that, it would be a little bit different. The fact that the first case is paper thin, bull excrement. It's like, are you serious? This is, you don't see the damage here that you can't even convince David Frum and Jonathan Chait that this is a meritorious investigation and prosecution. And it's all the more egregious when Alvin Bragg's office is, declining to prosecute violent crimes in the subways.
Totally.
So, that is...
I can't remember who tweeted it, but somebody said the next time that someone punches somebody out, is he going to do 34 counts based on each punch?
Well, I like Charlie Cook had this really hilarious line. It's like, if Trump had actually shot someone on Fifth Avenue, he probably would have gotten probation. So because
yeah, exactly.
It's like, are you kidding? And so, there's a part of me that's like, I really hope that, I don't know. You could see a rebellion in New York or something like that, But it's like, listen, these things can happen. Like the Democrats in 2020, they ran on defunding the police, and they can't really paid a price.
So let me ask you about that, because my theory has been, I actually asked my friend Emily Eakins at the Cato Institute, vice president there. She's their head of polling, to look into this this past week. I said, there has to be an actual line, like a researchable, sort of definable line, where the partisanship of a city leads their politicians to do incredibly crazy things that they wouldn't do if it was just a little bit lower. And I don't know what
Right.
that is, but think of it as like the Mendoza line for city.
Yeah, that's a great point.
It's like, is it because at 70% Democrat, they might not do these things, but at 80% Democrat, they'll do these things, and there's some point there that is definable. And I feel like that's what we're seeing right now. And it scares me only in the sense that, like, we are not that far removed. You remember, Eli, from the point where we could actually have people sit down in a room together and not just, treat each other like villains who needed to be cast aside into the, pits of hell. And what I think is, it's so weird because there is this alt history where in 2016, like, Chuck Schumer just decides to be best friends with Donald Trump, and they go down
where they do infrastructure.
Merry road together of what the realignment thought would happen, in terms of that. Instead, you get Russiagate, you get all these investigations, you get the animosity, the enduring animosity over Hillary, and that just extends to today. There's all these opinions out there, Eli, about what this does to the 2024 Republican nomination. Do you have an opinion yourself?
It's good for Trump.
Yeah.
And here's why it's good for Trump. I think a lot of people don't understand. There is a subset of Trump supporters who just love the guy because he's funny or whatever. I think most people, though, support Trump who are, like, within the Republican Party because his vices are virtues when you're up against, Andrew Weissman and Alvin Bragg and Russiagate and Hillary Clinton's efforts to, sick the FBI on the Trump campaign. And you look at the terrible behavior that is never really, like, there's no reckoning in the media. Like, I mean, I bring this up. I wrote this. We both wrote Spectator pieces on this. But last year, the Federal Election Commission fined Hillary Clinton's campaign and the DNC for, ready for it, misreporting the Steele dossier expenditures as legal fees or like legal payments, which is what Trump did with this hush money. Said, oh, they're legal fees to Michael Cohen. That sounds pretty similar to me. And if you're going to tell me that the public not knowing about Stormy Daniels, which, by the way, already, like, Stormy Daniels talked about this, like, I don't know, in 2011 or something like that, that was influencing, that was illegally influencing the election, then what the hell is the Steele dossier? And then, like, pretending that the Democrats didn't have anything to do with that. So it's such an obvious double standard for justice that it doesn't take much. You're not crazy to notice that it's a double standard for justice. And that they seem to be completely unaware of it.
I think it was one of my, I think it was Polymath, one of the people who I follow. He writes the Marginally Compelling Substack, who made the point that, if your standard is that George Soros didn't fund Alvin Bragg, then your standard is that Trump didn't pay Stormy Daniels.
Right.
Because it's both intermediaries.
Right.
But it seems just so ridiculous on its face. At the same time, I do think that there is this feeling among Republican voters, and you can tell me if you think I'm wrong, where as much as they support Trump against this onslaught and view him as being someone unfairly victimized, and targeted, there's also this feeling of exhaustion, this feeling that, it's always something with this guy, and so my question to you is, final question is, does that leave a lane for someone like Ron DeSantis to stand up and say, look, I think what they're doing is terrible. I think what they're doing is wrong. I can win, and I can win in a way that he can't. And I'm going to actually change things as opposed to just complain about them.
I don't know. I think it's going to be very hard to thread that needle.
Yeah.
Because in a weird way, I think the Democrats and Alvin Bragg are basically trying to get Trump the nomination for 2024. On the other hand, they're trying to disqualify him from the nomination in 2024. Yeah. So, like
make him win it, but take as many arrows as they possibly can drive into him.
Yeah, or like if this succeeds, then he can't run if he's convicted of a felony. So
yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting to see how DeSantis navigates that, particularly because I think now he's on this course where he can't afford not to run.
Well, I mean, I would much rather DeSantis be the nominee than Trump, but this makes it a lot harder for him.
Yeah, Eli Lake.
Because are you going to attack Trump now?
Sorry,
if you're DeSantis, you're going to attack Trump when you know what I mean? He's getting the slings and arrows from the.
So my theory of that case, and so this is. Look, I'll tell you what I would say.
Yeah.
If I were on stage with Donald Trump and I was Ron DeSantis, what I would say is, I really respect you and I think you did a lot of great things when you were president. But the fact is that when COVID came down, you botched it. You listened to Anthony Fauci. You listened to all the people at the CDC. You let them shut down the schools. You let them shut down the country. You never should have done that. You should have fired Anthony Fauci the minute that he said the school should be closed. In Florida, I did the opposite. I opened things back up, and you criticized me for it. And guess what? I was right. Okay? And you can say it as much as you want, but I was right, and you were wrong. And that tells us something about the way that we approach government, about the way that we approach our jobs, and about how much trust we put in the people. And that's the difference between you and me. You were wrong, and I was right. And the problem is, of course, that Trump will then, he'll lie about what actually happened. But
no, I think the problem
for Trump is that he can't afford to admit ever that he's wrong.
No, but I think that you're right. Had this indictment not happened, that would be a very, very effective attack line, and I would hope that DeSantis would do it. But if you are a tribe, okay, and there is an internal fight over who leads the tribe, well, it's a different fight when the tribe is under existential attack.
Exactly.
From another tribe, which is the point. Like, it's like, you could have that discussion like, hey, you kind of screwed up COVID. And you know what? Like, I don't actually think, your approach on this was as good as you think it is. Let's debate it, which is like what you could do if the Democrats were not launching, totally almost unpredicated, ridiculous, felony prosecutions against Trump. And, is it kind of ridiculous when he says, listen, if they can do it to me, they can do it to you, because how many average Americans pay $130,000 in hush payments to like porn stars? That's kind of ridiculous, but the sentiment is very real because a lot of Americans feel that they are screwed over by a faceless, largely progressive left-leaning bureaucracy, that in their workplace they are told that they can't say certain things and they're constantly wrong-footed and they could lose their job over things that seem like, the new codes of behavior that were just invented. So there is a sense of I think a lot of Republican and conservatives are feeling somewhat aggrieved, and Trump being attacked is the way that he lashes them ever closer to him.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to then have another conversation, which I hope, which would be great. Let's talk about managing COVID. Let's talk about Anthony Fauci.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That should be our public conversation, but it won't be because of Alvin freaking Bragg. I'm sorry, but that is just like, and he's really like I don't want to hear from Democrats again about the rule of law or how they love democracy. You don't love democracy.
They don't believe that when they say it.
It's all like happy talk because and I don't even understand. I don't even think it's smart from the perspective of the Trump resistance, right? Like, I just think that this muddies the water. It doesn't, you know what I mean? Like, if there are other indictments, then it's like you're going to compare it to this crap.
Well, I mean, part of this too is that they're running on, if you look at kind of the election cycles that we've had, they're running on abortion and anti-election denial. Sort of. You can trust us when it comes to, the election side of things. And they've weaponized that, repeatedly. They did it again in Wisconsin this week. And this whole, like, we believe in law and order and no one's above the law stuff, it's absolutely, transparent in terms of how ridiculous that is and how much that's a lie.
Amen. And I I think there's a part of this, which is because it does seem insane. It does seem reckless, right? It does seem like this is a crazy thing to do, right? Mm-hmm. I think some of it is because there is an elite cult-like bubble that they have wanted since 2017 to see Trump incarcerated. Mm-hmm. And they never get it. And this is like, and they just, that's all they care about. It's because it's like, if we look at this as like the politics of a great nation, that's maybe the wrong thing. We should look at this as, you know, fan fiction for like Buffy the Vampire Slayer super
fan
fans.
Fiction for Joy Behar. That's what it is.
Yeah, right. Fan fiction for Joy Behar. I'm just saying, it's like, this is like the final scene. We need this. Like, what you're going to deny us the season finale for Game of Thrones? Give me a break. I want this. And it's like, it's their entertainment, but it's also their identity. Mm-hmm. And they lecture us about how much they care about democracy. And you know, listen, I'm delighted that Democrats have finally discovered that Russia's really bad, because I've thought that for many years. So I am like, you know, harder, faster, stronger for Ukraine. But it's like, you know, it's amazing to me. It's so bad for the country, and they think they're doing the right thing. They think they're heroes, and the way to explain that is that they're like just basically part of like this overzealous fan community.
Yeah. Eli Lake, thank you so much for taking time to
Ben Domenech, always a pleasure.
emergency conversation.